Pansy Tlakula has been reappointed as chairperson of the Information Regulator of South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa has also reappointed advocates Lebogang, Stroom-Nzama and Collen. The regulator is tasked with ensuring the protection of personal information and ensuring access to information. Tlakula joins us now to discuss this further. Thank you very much for your time, ma'am. Since the introduction of the POPI Act, do you think it's working? Do you think South Africans are understanding of how important it is to make sure that you ask for permission first before you give people's information?
Good afternoon, Masego, to you and your viewers. I think it's still early days. We still have to ramp up our public awareness and education programs, because the first 5 years, although we did some public awareness campaigns, but we concentrated more on building the organization, because as you can remember, we started this organization from scratch. It did not exist before.
All right, and when you look at the access to information, for instance, I mean, in South Africa, a lot of people, because I think of our history, don't really have equal access to information. You have people, for instance, in rural areas who don't have the internet and cannot access information to be able to give themselves knowledge. How far are we in South Africa in rectifying this?
We are still far. The Protection of Access to Information Act, PAIA as we call it, has been in existence for almost 2 decades. But if one looks at how it has been used and correctly so, to expose corruption and malfeasance. Yes, that's one of the functions of the Act, to request information so as to expose corruption. But I think we need a paradigm shift. Before the elections, there were lots of unrests, protests for lack of service delivery. So we think that going forward, we have to empower the rural communities and the ordinary people for them to be able to request information from the municipalities, information that will assist them to access services from the municipalities. So we want to shift focus a little bit so that our public awareness campaigns can concentrate on ordinary people.
And of course, in South Africa and around the world, we know that the law is very tricky, right? There are laws that protect you, but that also can allow you to infringe on other people's laws. So when you look at the PAIA Act, the Information Act, the Access to Information Act, are there loopholes, for instance, for people to abuse that act and get information about people that they shouldn't actually be having?
No, the reason why the legislature created the Information Regulator and made the Information Regulator to be responsible for both the promotion of access to information and the protection of personal information, it's because those two rights have to balance each other. While on one hand, we have to ensure that the government and everyone else is transparent and makes information accessible, we have to ensure that in doing that, everyone respects the right to privacy. So the two acts complement each other, and they are drafted in such a way that the one right balances the other. So if, for instance, one goes to a public institution or to a private body for that matter and requests for your personal information, then PAIA will say that person is not entitled to that information because it is your personal information. But there are also exceptions. The information could be private, but you may find that it will be in the public interest for that information to be made available. To give you a case in point, before the courts at the moment, there is a case of the tax records of the former president, President Zuma. That case illustrates very clearly the balancing of those acts, while in terms of PAIA, his tax records are private and confidential, But the Amabungani says they might be that, but it is in the public interest for those records to be made available. So you see how the two rights have to balance each other. So it's quite interesting. And I think going forward, the regulator is going to be in a very interesting space to see how it balances privacy against access to information.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Pansy Tlakula, here on eNCA.